Hello, here we are on the Sugarloaf. It's coming towards the end of September and a really beautiful morning. So I just want to show the break off of the Tree Trout stream at its source. So the source is here. We have the Sugarloaf here. We have different types of heather, gorse, numerous types of grasses, bird trefoil, cat's ear, probably hawkbit as well, and a few other specimens that I'm not aware of growing throughout the grasses here. Numerous types of bees would live in the uplands here, and certain bumblebees as well. It's shared with the sheep, so you can see the sheep here. And you can see sheep in the hills over here as well, and the uplands here. Glen the Downs is over here. So continuing on from another video that I did a while ago on the Sugarloaf, I would like to talk now to know a little bit more about how the water is splitting off when it comes down here. So the water comes down here, obviously it travels through here and it will land here as well. And what you can see is, I'm going to point out to you the areas it's collecting. Here's the main valley, just here, behind the sheep, where you can see the water collects, and there's a deep gorge. So water's coming off this hill and this hill into this gorge. The first thing that we need to do, and it is fenced, is agree with the local farmers, find out who owns that section, and if it's owned by the government, you know, all we have to do is ensure it's fully fenced off, tall enough to not let deer in as well, which is really important, because you want the small trees we put in there to grow. And the upland trees native to Ireland are what you go in there. So they would be dwarf willow, Scots pine, maybe some hawthorn, mountain rowan. They're the key ones that I'm aware of that would be in the uplands, and maybe some juniper. Maybe people can correct me on that if that's incorrect, but as far as I know, in the uplands, when it's really quite rocky, like when you look at the Sugarloaf here, look, you have your quartz and numerous other stones, mineral structures there that only certain trees can establish themselves with. One of the points on the trees is, take a look at this. This is some type of conifer tree, non-native to Ireland. Maybe it's a larch. These are self-seeding here, and they're all throughout the area here. And one of the things I think that would be a great idea is for people who want to bring back the wild Ireland and protect all our biodiversity to team up with the Pure Mile. The Pure Mile are a brilliant group. They got 150,000 this year from the government, and what could happen is, when people do the mile, another team joins and that plants alongside them. So for example, the entrance to the Sugarloaf here could be planted with the dwarf willow, with some hawthorn, some mountain rowan at different points. So you're not blocking any vistas, you're just putting in what should be here, and we take out what shouldn't be there, you know. That's really important. Remove non-native that should not be there. And just do photographs, record the insects are there, and make a whole portfolio for each mile that's done. I think that would be a brilliant way to team up. So mile by mile, we're rehabilitating Ireland to support insect populations, which, as you know, are collapsing. And the insects need the native trees to live on. They need to feed on the leaves, lay their eggs on them, etc. And the Pure Mile could really be that. It could be not only cleaning the area, but rehabilitating nature as well. So going back to the stream, here's our stream here. We can see the grass stored for the following year. I believe this is silage. Sorry for my ignorance on that. And we need to confirm that everything that's been done here, working with the farmers, does not pollute the stream. So one of the things I'd be suggesting is that there's a tree buffer zone put along all the hedgerows. So the hedgerows are trebled in width. What that means is the runoff from the field, if the field is being improved, and that field does look like it's being improved, if it's getting fertilizer put on it, if it's getting a weed spray on it, etc., none of that goes into the gorge. The gorge is here. Sometimes sheep are in the gorge, and I'd be saying the sheep come out of the gorge. You don't let that happen. So that protects the source of the stream. The second point I bring up is here is the spill off. As the water comes down, it goes this direction and that direction. So you've water coming off the mountain here, and you've water coming off the plains here at the bottom of the Sugarloaf, and they're collecting in this bog wetland. You see it here? So here we have loads of bog. This would have all been covered in trees, of course, a few hundred years ago, but they've all unfortunately been felled. So in the middle of this, when you go on Google Map, you'll see there's a wetland, there's a small lake. The last thing we should have done was plant conifer in that area. Like, it's obvious reasons, right? If we know all our insects and animals used to live in deciduous forests native to our own, they don't survive in conifer belts. So I do believe Pippa Hackett has a hard job ahead of her as the Minister for Forestry, but we need to find that balance. So the area that I would recommend for forest is the area that has been worked for a long time, but it's difficult land. And Jennifer Whitmore in the Social Democrats is also proposing the same idea, that we purchase land from farmers that just isn't even suitable for farming. It's really difficult. And instead of spraying it with loads of chemicals to try and make it better, leave it alone. Plant it with the trees correct for that area and watch the wildlife come back. And it's protected, it's continuous forest, it's not for cutting. Sorry, it's not continuous forest, it's permanent forest. It's not for cutting down, it's been left. We need to do that with minimum 10 to 15% of Ireland. And then the other 10% can be continuous forest cover. What I mean by that is they're harvesting it every 20 to 30 years, but you don't remove the whole forest, you remove parts of it. And new saplings grow up, new oaks are growing up through it. And the whole time you're supporting your biodiversity. That's the only way forward. So if we look here, you can see a line going through the forest here, and the small water pooling which would undulate, go up and down, perfect for frogs and newts and certain birds that love to live in reeds. It's a perfect area for it. That would have all been covered in grasses and different trees, you know, a few thousand years ago. That needs to be returned back to that. And on the edge here where the sheep are, you have a buffer zone that collects any runoff from that, so the farmer can continue to do sheep. The big thing that I've learned about sheep farming is you have sheep dip. Sheep dip is when the sheep are dipped in a chemical in order to kill anything that's living on them, like ticks or flies that lay eggs in their skin. It's a real big problem in Australia, and the flies burrow in, leave an egg, and that creates a raw sore on the sheep. So one of the reasons sheep go into a dip is to protect that, and that does need to be done. One of the great things the Department of Agriculture and our scientists could do is that every single chemical we use at the moment in agriculture, they're going to start researching how can we do it in a way that doesn't destroy the land. How can we do it in a way that doesn't wipe out all the insects? Is there some method we can use? The other suggestion I have is, if we can't do that, is that there's a sheep dip area. So there's one area, it can be a portable truck that has the liquid inside it, and the farmers bring their sheep to that area on the day. They're brought in, they're dipped in, they're brought back in the truck to the farmer's land. No dipping takes place on the land. In that way, none of the sheep dip is poured in. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here with these farmers, but I have heard that the sheep dip is just being poured into the land. That means it's going into our water table and wiping out all the insects and biota that lives in our streams and rivers. So that's so important that we come up with a method that works for the farmer. Essentially, there's no further cost to the farmer. Everything I'm suggesting has to be subsidized, because it's about protecting the future of our environment. And most importantly, the Department of Agriculture is totally failing on this. It is about food security. If you don't have an insect population, you don't have food security. And the present stance we're on is collapsing. And our food security, our policy, comes from Germany. It comes from Bayer, DuPont, and the top chemical companies. And what is the situation of insects in Germany? 75% collapse in 40 years of insect weight. 75%. And they're continuing the policy of spraying and chemicals that they use in their country. These companies are lying to us. They're about making money. They're about owning the space of food production. And fundamentally, they're forcing the farmer into a position where the farmer is earning less and less and less. And farmers work so hard, they're so proud of the work they do. Their land is usually passed down for hundreds of years. And the shame of closing a farm or selling off a field is really hard for farmers. And I really feel for them. They've every right to have a future, and for their son and daughter to want to take on that. The other major problem in farming is most kids, they don't want to take it on. They see how hard it is for the parents. Parents are earning next to nothing, and they're just getting these payments from Europe that really keep them in an impoverished state. So really the way forward is really healthy food, really healthy farming that works with the land, that farmers can be proud of to pass on to their children, and that the farmers get paid a fair amount for what they produce. So in this case, as far as you know, for sheep, you're looking here at sheep. As far as you know, the price for wool, I saw this in a documentary in Australia, a price for wool is next to zero. I don't know how that's happened, because wool is a really important byproduct used in clothes, of course. Wool is also an amazing natural insulator. So no toxins, no chemicals, and it insulates. It's a natural fire retardant and a natural defense against mold. Mold cannot grow in wool. So in all of our walls, in all of our attics, you can use wool as an amazing insulator. It does need to be topped up every 10 years, but there, as I said before, no mold. Mold grows in chemical insulation, so your fiberglass insulation. That insulation does not break down. It's toxic, totally toxic to our environment. The wool is non-toxic. So we are retrofitting all our homes now. So here you have a double solution. The farmer gets paid for his wool. The wool is a non-toxic insulation material, and on top of that, we should be marketing our wool and our wool products better. We all know the Americans love our jumpers, etc. All of that stuff should be